Do you know who I am?
No, I don't. No, no.
Although it has long been known that GloRilla had previously been arrested for drug offenses. Her current actions in court may have compounded matters. The judge was apparently irritated by her nonchalant and dismissive demeanor. When she appeared in court, her case may suffer as a result of this response. A more severe punishment, perhaps even jail time, may result from this strategy. Some are now wondering, while most people were lounging around their homes or in their communities on Saturday night, July 19, 2025, GloRilla was in Indianapolis. At the WNBA All-Star Game, she joined Letter Cook, Typa, and TGI for a halftime performance. A significant event in women's athletics was taking place. But a severe issue was developing back home in Georgia. GloRilla was either still in Indianapolis, celebrating her performance, or getting ready for the night, when 3 masked people broke into her house in the St. Marlow community of Forsyth County, Georgia. At around 1:30 a.m., a random break-in by someone seeking little goods or quick cash was not the cause of this incident. The suspects appeared to be aware that she wasn't home at the time, according to her legal team. Since the break-in seemed to have been prearranged, it's possible that someone knew specifics about her itinerary. However, family members were residing in the house when the break-in took place, so it wasn't unoccupied. They were shocked since the incursion came so abruptly and unexpectedly. For anyone in that situation, hearing footsteps and strange sounds within the house would have been frightening. The accused didn't simply steal anything they could find. They intentionally targeted pricey jewelry, which begs the question of how they knew what to seek for and where to locate it. The intruders may have received information from someone who knew GloRilla's belongings and habits because of this level of accuracy. One of the armed individuals inside the house opened fire to try to defend the house and the occupants, which escalated the situation. The suspects left the location due to the shooting. Thankfully, neither the suspects nor anybody else in the residence suffered any injuries. The defensive shots were meant to dissuade rather than hurt, according to this. The family reported the crime to police authorities in accordance with the correct legal procedures after the suspects left. They had moved to defend themselves within the bounds of the law after becoming the victims of an armed house invasion. They anticipated that the focus of the authorities would be on identifying and prosecuting the guilty parties, as was fitting considering the gravity of the situation. Deputies started looking into the gunshots and the break-in as soon as they arrived. The crime scene unit and major crimes investigators' involvement indicated that the case was initially being handled as a serious one. But something unexpected happened during the investigation that caused the officers' attention to change. Deputies said they smelled something powerful that they thought was illicit. The inquiry changed course as a result of this observation. Attention was partially diverted to the potential for drug use or possession at the scene, rather than being fully focused on the armed break-in and the pursuit of the perpetrators. There are now concerns about whether the violent break-in, which was the primary issue, got the attention it merited because of this shift in priorities. When other possible infractions are found, the case brought to light a larger discussion over the priorities of law enforcement. Some believe the investigation into the more serious crime may have been hampered by the timing of the change in focus, even if the smell of an unlawful chemical may have legal significance. Discussions over whether the burglary suspects might have benefited from this shift in the focus of the investigation were also raised by the occurrence. The introduction of a drug-related angle increased the case's complexity, but ultimately, the break-in remained a severe concern.
They got a search warrant, and authorities discovered what they called a significant amount of marijuana in a bedroom closet.
Enforcement chose to enlist the Lanier Regional Drug Task Force following the initial investigation, and they started the process of securing search warrants for the property. As a result of this change in emphasis, more resources were being brought in, including specialized narcotics unit police, additional staff, and laborious paperwork, while the real suspects who committed the home invasion were getting farther away every hour. Upon executing the search, deputies reported discovering an unidentified Schedule I restricted substance in the closet of the master bedroom, along with what they described as a significant quantity of marijuana. The products included almost 2 pounds of premium cannabis and some THC concentrate. According to WSB-TV, the fact that GloRilla wasn't even close to the scene when this was all happening only served to aggravate the issue for many onlookers. Thousands of people watched her perform during a nationally televised WNBA All-Star halftime concert in Indianapolis, hundreds of miles away, while cameras followed her every step. As far as alibis go, it was as solid as it got. Nevertheless, as a result of the incident, she was the only one charged with a crime. Hard questions were raised when authorities said the drugs were in plain sight. If these drugs were indeed lying around, why didn't the people who were staying at her house, who probably had concerns about her reputation and job, take care of the matter before calling the police? If they were concerned about her reputation, why didn't they secure or take away the valuables as soon as the burglars left and before the police showed up? People who are in the public glare, as well as those who are not, frequently discover this harsh reality too late. The people you trust have the power to either protect or endanger you. There were major repercussions from the choice taken by people in her house that evening. The case took an unexpected turn once arrest warrants were filed based on the search results. Now facing felony drug charges that carry a potential sentence of years in prison is the victim of a violent break-in who was not even in the same state at the time. What transpired next further increased public anxiety about the system's functioning, especially when it comes to high-profile Black performers, even if the situation was already out of the ordinary. When GloRilla found out that she was wanted by the people of Forsyth County, she decided to confront the situation head-on. She turned herself in willingly to the Forsyth County Jail on Tuesday, July 22, 2025. Instead, she chose to face the allegations right away, even though she had other options, such as postponing extradition, hiring attorneys to prolong the proceedings, or trying to settle the matter privately. Her charges, which included felony possession of a Schedule I restricted narcotic and felony possession of marijuana for possessing more than 1 ounce, were by no means insignificant. According to Georgia law, these are significant offenses, and a conviction for the marijuana accusation alone could result in a jail term of 1 to 10 years. As a result, the person whose home was broken into was facing a possible 10-year prison sentence, while the armed burglars who committed the crime went unpunished and were still at large. She secured a $22,260 bond that same day, but the legal pressure and harm to her reputation were already having an effect. In contrast to many states that have legalized or decriminalized cannabis, Georgia's drug laws are still quite stringent. Owing to outdated laws that haven't been changed in decades, possessing more than an ounce of cannabis can still result in felony charges outside of restricted exceptions for low THC. Medical usage. GloRilla openly addressed the issue 2 days later, on July 24th. In a post on X, the 3 main aspects of her statement were that she had been in Indianapolis for the WNBA All-Star Game when her house was broken into, and that authorities had detained her for possessing cannabis rather than concentrating on apprehending the criminals. She purposefully avoided using slang terminology and instead called the drug cannabis, a decision that might have been influenced by legal advice. Her letter emphasized how ridiculous it is that the only person accused is the victim of a crime. Instead of allowing the arrest to define her, she used it as a chance. She made $40 worth of stuff with her mugshot on it, a move that some sources have linked to other artists' similar attempts to take back control of their image. She had a marketable booking photo, according to TMZ. Meanwhile, a scathing statement denouncing Forsyth County officials was released by her lawyers, Marissa Goldberg and Drew Finneling. According to them, the arrest is a glaring illustration of law enforcement's misaligned priorities, as the armed house invasion should have been the primary focus instead of pursuing narcotics. Charges against a confirmed victim.
Well, if you don't have anything to hide, you don't hide anything. So my view was she shouldn't have had the weed in her house, and obviously there had to be enough where the smell was overwhelming, and law enforcement, on a call to protect her, found, oops, we got to do it.
The arguments made by her legal team become more pointed at this point, bringing up issues with the overreach of police. The first thing they did was remind everyone that GloRilla was not a suspect, but rather the victim of a horrific house invasion. Although it may seem apparent, they believed it needed to be made explicit. Second, her family members who were present when the crime occurred called the police, which was the appropriate thing to do. But the officers' attention was diverted to what they said was a little quantity of marijuana. The sheriff's earlier assertion that a sizable quantity was discovered was squarely at odds with this. The third and possibly most concerning step involved law authorities obtaining search and arrest warrants for GloRilla, despite the fact that she had not been at her residence for a while. No arrest warrants were filed for the burglary perpetrators. However, according to her lawyers, the situation was unthinkable and a waste of public funds. They weren't only standing up for their client, they were also denouncing a system that appeared more focused on apprehending a well-known individual than on finding the perpetrators of the brutal crime. The emotional toll the incident took on GloRilla's family was another area of emphasis. For the legal team, they discussed the anxiety and anguish brought on by the break-in at the house and brought attention to the fact that the actual culprits have not been apprehended. Those in charge were still at large, despite the fact that innocent people were intimidated in their own homes, confronted with firearms, and left in terror for their lives. The victim, meanwhile, was having legal issues of her own. The sheriff's office maintained its strategy for handling the case in spite of these objections. The homeowner is a victim of a serious crime, and we are committed to bringing the suspects to justice, said Sheriff Ron Freeman in a public statement about the situation. This remark emphasized the main problem, acknowledging her as a victim, while treating her as though she had committed a crime. At the same time, we must continue to uphold and enforce the law in all facets of this case. A legal expert outlined the complex balance authorities claim to be keeping between upholding the law and addressing a victim's case in order to justify their actions.
Substantial evidence. If I went to bed last night, there was no snow on the ground. I woke up this morning, there was snow, hardly likely in Atlanta today, and we know it snowed somehow. They smell marijuana, and as a result of that, they executed a search warrant, and what did they find? Well over an ounce, which is a felony.
The burglary case is still being investigated, according to the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office. As of July 27, 2025, no one had been taken into custody for the actual break-in, despite detectives claiming to have gathered both physical and trace forensic evidence from the suspects. The aspect that bothers me is that, despite the combined efforts of a major crime section, a county sheriff's office, and a regional narcotics task force, they were unable to apprehend 3 burglars who allegedly left tangible evidence behind just days after the incident. However, within a few days, they were able to apprehend the individual whose house had been targeted. The public's response was swift, of course. On Twitter, people expressed their disapproval of the fact that the emphasis had moved from apprehending the actual robbers to charging GloRilla with marijuana possession. No arrests for the suspects after her home was hit. But she's the one who ends up in cuffs for weed. One post summed it up. Additionally, the situation was not covered on a modest scale. The story was covered by major news agencies, including CNN, The Guardian, WSB-TV, Fox 5 Atlanta, TMZ, The Washington Post, and People. They both agreed that it was illogical for GloRilla to be considered both the accused and the victim. The fact that so many major venues promote the same viewpoint shows how seriously the crisis affects the system. it's important to pose more difficult queries that go beyond the news reports, such as who was with her that evening and whether this was just poor luck or something more intentional. Because when the fundamental facts are presented, the topic of loyalty and who you can really trust when you're at the top is what people are talking about on the street. But the mainstream media won't discuss directly how GloRilla became the only person charged when she wasn't even in the same state at the time is the question that most people avoid. The response to that raises some alarming possibilities that ought to cause anyone to reconsider their dependencies. Indeed, the case brings up more general concerns regarding the disproportionate targeting of Black Americans for marijuana-related offenses. That is a serious issue that is a component of a larger systemic issue. Beyond that, though, there is a more important personal lesson to be learned. The people you surround yourself with may either protect you or expose you. And sometimes you are unaware of which until harm has been done. Considering the situation, rationally, 3 armed trespassers broke into GloRilla's property. Her relatives who were residing there endured a horrific experience. They exchanged gunfire to protect the house. Law enforcement was contacted when the suspects ran away. The most notable aspect is the time lag between the call and the police's actual arrival to conduct an investigation. Everyone in the house knew that officers were approaching from that window. They were aware that they would be closely watched, questioned, and searched. Additionally, they were aware that GloRilla had the greatest stakes because she was the homeowner and a well-known individual. Making sure nothing in the house could be used against her should have been your first course of action if you were in that situation. This is not about placing blame on the victim. To be clear, GloRilla was obviously the goal of the break-in, and she was subsequently charged with something she shouldn't have been. However, what it indicates about her inner circle cannot be ignored. Her intimate private space, the closet in her master bedroom, was where the marijuana was found. Anything discovered at her house would be directly linked to her, as any visitor would know. They would also be aware that she had the most stake in the outcome. However, until law police discovered it, that evidence remained in the exact place, where it could cause her the greatest harm. That kind of circumstance makes you wonder if those who are standing by you are actually defending you or are merely occupying your time. Additionally, this arrest wasn't occurring in a vacuum. GloRilla was already arrested for DUI in Gwinnett County in April 2024 after he made an unlawful U-turn at a red light. Officers said they could smell alcohol and marijuana at the time. That earlier event provides a broader context for the 2025 arrest by demonstrating that Georgia has before been the site of her legal issues. Given that background, the conclusion of this recent instance becomes much more complex because it now involves a number of decisions, relationships, and circumstances that have left her susceptible rather than just the burglary.
Do you know who I am? No, I don't. No, ma'am. Oh.
Here's where this circumstance relates to a more profound and concerning trend in the entertainment sector. Many drew comparisons between this situation and Juice WRLD, where his loved ones were present during his court issues. Even though the specifics were different, the underlying query stayed the same. Are those in a celebrity's inner circle genuinely loyal, or are they just taking advantage of the fact that they are now practically providing for them financially? One analyst gave a straightforward explanation. Why didn't they take that item out of the house and take care of it before it became an issue? Many individuals have a misunderstanding of what snitching is. Speaking with the cops directly isn't always the best course of action. There is an unwritten rule in many celebrity circles that says that while everyone gains from the star's success, when problems arise, it's all about the individual. The same individuals who were able to live well thanks to GloRilla's success, stay in her house, and appreciate her kindness couldn't spare a few minutes to stop a situation that could have ended her career and possibly led to years of imprisonment. This section of the narrative brought up issues of personal loyalty, as well as how easily those close to you can vanish when things become hard. Examining the role of law enforcement in this case is particularly crucial because, albeit from a different perspective, their conduct also generated grave concerns. Many viewed their concentration on pursuing drug charges against GloRilla, while showing minimal signs of progress in locating the burglars as a glaring example of unfair treatment inside the legal system. This was not merely conjecture. Studies have demonstrated that these trends frequently manifest when location and race are taken into account. There are already particular difficulties associated with being a young, accomplished Black woman in the South, particularly with regard to public opinion and police scrutiny. The level of scrutiny rises further when one considers influence, income, and celebrity status. Authorities wishing to set an example or get notoriety may find someone more likely to target them as a result of this combination. The pursuit of a public figure for a non-violent offense seems to take precedence over the pursuit of armed criminals who carried out a violent home invasion in this instance. Many viewed this as an illustration of how the legal system occasionally prioritizes high-profile, speedy arrests above the more difficult task of investigating serious crimes. The attention was diverted to a marijuana possession case rather than locating the individuals who had committed burglaries and threatened lives. Her supporters were irritated by this change, and others began to doubt the system's priorities and fairness. These kinds of activities have long-term effects that go beyond the current case, according to the legal expert who was speaking about the issue. They have the power to affect public confidence in law enforcement, particularly in areas where such instances have previously occurred. When violent perpetrators go unpunished while attention is focused elsewhere, people take note, and eventually, it leads to the perception that some people are singled out more for their identity than their actions.
Absolutely. If someone who is charged with a crime volunteers, gives him, or in this case herself, up, the prosecutors, the DA's office, and the DA's office recites it's very good, they will likely reduce this. Depending on the amount, could easily be reduced to a misdemeanor. But again, it depends on the amount and how it was packaged.
Though GloRilla was surrounded by legal issues, she managed to keep her career on track by performing at the WNBA All-Star Game just hours after the break-in, alongside Rob 49 and Mooney Long. She was also scheduled to perform as the main act at her first annual Glow Bash in Memphis on July 25, 2025. Managing those responsibilities while dealing with such severe accusations demonstrated a level of fortitude and self-control that not all artists could muster. Hits like Yaglo and TGIF from her 2024 debut album, Glorious, won her accolades from industry heavyweights like Rihanna and even an invitation to the White House in March of that year. She was one of hip-hop's most promising artists, gaining traction in a way that attracted the interest of both fans and major players in the industry. She wasn't just another performer in legal problems. There was a lot on the line. GloRilla could have been sentenced to 1 to 10 years in prison if found guilty of felony marijuana possession in Georgia. Furthermore, depending on the circumstances of the case, a Schedule I controlled substance accusation carries the possibility of severe punishment. It was a sobering fact that someone who had overcome adversity developed a successful profession. From her gift and helped those around her now faced the prospect of losing all. She had already been the victim of a violent break-in when drugs were discovered in her own house, which led to all of this. According to recent sources, the sheriff's office is still looking for forensic evidence as part of the ongoing burglary investigation. However, her team and supporters are even more frustrated by the absence of arrests. The victim is facing criminal charges, but the armed break-in perpetrators are still at large weeks after the incident. Many believe that the case exposes a troubling injustice in the legal system, where bringing accusations that will make headlines can sometimes take precedence over removing dangerous criminals from society. In her inner group, it also sparked awkward doubts about loyalty. The individuals closest to a person can make all the difference when their freedom and career are at stake. However, the repercussions might be disastrous if those individuals do not stand up. GloRilla has shown her resolve by turning her mugshot into products, speaking out in public, and hiring a top-tier legal team. She was aware of the risks and knew how to resist the pressure of the system. In actuality, though, she never ought to have found herself in this predicament. This incident turned into a warning, a reminder that the story can change from victim to suspect in an instant and that years of work can be undone by the wrong combination of circumstances. In addition to the unfairness, this case will be remembered on the streets for revealing the flaws in the legal system and individual allegiance. Ultimately, this demonstrates why choosing a team of people who will genuinely support you in times of need is just as important as choosing a business or professional path. For more tales like this, please subscribe to the channel and like the video if you liked this analysis. Keep checking back for all the most recent information and in-depth analyses you won't want to miss.